We think everything has to be in a cage because we put ourselves in cages. I think we're very afraid of freedom. And that's why we don't honor wild animals. We don't honor the wildness within us. If you have freedom, you're responsible for your own choices. There's nobody to blame anymore. So that freedom and that wildness and that beauty is within us. And we have to go into it before we can open the channels and receive it and see it in the world around us.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, where you can find a large selection of Om and yoga clothing, spiritual jewelry, and unique fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now here's your host, Ashton Szabo.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Savannah Podcast. I'm really excited about our show today. It's all about animals. And in particular, we're going to talk about something that I know is interesting and important to a lot of our listeners, and that's animal cruelty. Now, the Humane Society estimates that 1 million animals a year are abused or killed in connection with domestic violence. Billions of animals raised for food suffer under inhumane conditions in industrial farms. Experts even estimate that the current extinction rates are between 1,000 to 10,000 times higher than the natural extinction rate, with some even referring to this as the sixth extinction crisis. Oceans are being over-harvested. The world seems at times to literally have a bloodlust for cruelty. It only takes a few moments looking on the internet or on YouTube of the horrible things happening in industrial farms to really wake people up and shock them up from what's happening and what humans are doing to other animals on the planet right now. But before we dive too much into the topic, I want to read a quote, and the quote is by Albert Einstein. And he said, "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of true art and true science. Whoever does not know it and can no longer wonder, no longer marvel, is as good as dead, and his eyes are dimmed." Now, I'm reading that quote for two reasons. The first reason is because it's coming from a book called Whispers from the Wild by our guest, Amelia Kinkade. The second reason why I'm reading that quote is because I consider myself to be a very grounded, rational individual. I want to see the scientific research behind things. But at the same time, my life experiences, and in particular my experiences with yoga and shamanic work, have led me to understand that not only are there things that I cannot explain, but there are things out there in the world that science cannot explain. There's a mystery out there that is beyond our scope of understanding. And while I think it's good to critically approach those things and look at them with open eyes, there are still some things that we will never, ever understand. And in the yogic traditions, we have what are called yogic cities. These are these supernatural abilities that are part of our human birthright, but at the same time, they often come up through the practice of yoga. And if we were using that language, we would say that our guest today, Amelia, has the yogic city perhaps of expanding her consciousness and connecting with animals and communicating with animals. Now, she does all kinds of different work, from working with the horses at Buckingham Palace. She's communicated with great white sharks and black mambas, everything down to the local dog and cat, everything in between. And I thought she could offer a really interesting perspective on this conversation, on this topic of animals and animal cruelty, as she's devoted her entire life to communicating with animals and helping to spread the messages that she is feeling, that she is receiving from animals that she communicates with around the world. So really excited to get her perspectives, get a new look and a new vision, perhaps a new perspective on this topic. Excited to have her on the show. Amelia, welcome.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting to start this crying, but you've already reduced me to tears in a beautiful way. I have so much to say already about the things that you've commented on.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what we're talking about here is the nature of consciousness. We're talking about the fact that that spark of God, that creative intelligence, that universal magic that is spirit. Because we don't know what gave us life. I mean, speaking of science needing to catch up, we don't know what consciousness is. We don't know where it's located in the body. We don't know how it operates. We know that we are alive. We know that our organs are operating by themselves without any intervention from our egos. I mean, you're expecting your digestion to work and your circulation to work. Our bodies are so magical. If you cut your toe, it would automatically heal itself. There's no ego intervention. You are not operating your body. Some divine consciousness that created us and all the animals on this planet is operating something that's so much larger than we are that we can't see it. That doesn't make it magical or invisible. That makes it real, but we as cells in the body of God are not aware of all that's happening within the body of God. Now, this new idea of consciousness, and it's based on respect, that I'm going to look at a tiger and I'm not going to say, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, I'm more superior than you are. I therefore have the right to subjugate you or torture you or eat you, because he is a divine being. And when I honor the divinity inside every animal, no matter what form that God consciousness takes, that's what makes the communication possible. It's locating the Spirit of God within you, which listens to the Spirit of God within them. And it makes an actual quantum process possible. And it's through that energetic exchange that you can pick up information from the world around you, which, as you said so beautifully, it's our birthright. Mm-hmm. It's something we were born with the ability to connect to the world around us. And we should have an authentic response to the animals around us. And what we've lost is this sense of awe and wonder and reverence and respect and that childlike excitement.
Well, and I love that you even just straight out of the gate started talking about consciousness, because that's actually kind of where I wanted to start, in the sense of when I hear you talk or I read your writing, you talk about consciousness in the same way that yogis do. I know that you do have a background in transcendental meditation, but I'm curious how, so we have like a ground floor, a foundation that we're starting the conversation on. How would you define consciousness, and how has that definition been influenced by the work that you do with animals?
Well, there's another level of reality. I mean, we're learning how to tap other ways of viewing ourselves in the world around us. The 0 point energy field is a library of holographic records, and it houses within it every living being, the history of every living being. And we, as the cells in the body of God, have something within us. And I used to use the analogy, Ashton, of a radio. And now the analogy of internet has given me a wonderful new way to describe it. Now, I couldn't tell you how my computer works. I couldn't tell you how internet works. But when I turn on the computer, I expect it to work. And that's the way we humans are, that we're using and utilizing technology that we don't understand personally. I mean, somebody does who created it, but I don't. Now, that came from the human mind, which means that a human mind created this. Therefore, the human mind already had the capacity within it to know what internet is. Now, internet is a World Wide Web, and that World Wide Web exists with all the living beings on this planet, including the plants, including the bodies of water. And that connection goes out into the universe, including the stars. So what we're learning now, it's almost like switching from AM to FM. To be able to function in a wave form instead of a particle form, in a wave form where all the beings are connected and we're able to communicate with other living beings by means of a quantum process.
Now, when you say wave versus particle, to kind of grasp that a little bit further. Do you mean kind of in the sense like particle being the sense that it's established, it's one thing, it's here, not there, versus the wave of kind of expanding our awareness in a more fluid state that is continuously connected to things? Is that kind of how you mean by it, or?
Exactly. And a particle is separate. So if a human being, if you're going to say, this is my body, these are my thoughts, these are my emotions, I am therefore separate. Instead of saying, it's not my emotion, it's fear. Fear is universal. I can tap into fear, I cannot tap into fear. It's unconditional love. Love is a body of energy that's available to all of us that we can tap into at any time for no reason. And a particle is separate. So that's you functioning as ice. Now, if that ice were to melt down and we start working with the heart chakra, with the breath, with the belly, melting down the ice so that now you are water, you're fluid. You may look at your dog and say, I am my dog is me. Because we're two separate bodies, but we're within the same energetic field. So that's what a constellation is in psychology. And also now how it extends, I work with people and their horses and their animals, of how their animals are affected by their emotional state. You know, we put a lot of emphasis on food. What are they eating? As opposed to, what am I subjecting them to with my stress, with my argument with someone, with my own fears? And my animals in that, you know, it's in the energetic field.
Well, and I think that the point too of the fact that animals, I think anyone that spent significant time around animals knows that animals are very sensitive and attuned to the things that are going on. There's even some recent information and research that came out on, oh yeah, you know how science has said for years that dogs don't feel things? Guess what? We were wrong. Now we have the scientific proof. I mean, it was something that's obvious, I think, to anyone that spent time around animals, but now science is coming and goes, okay, no, that's right. Yeah, they do have feelings. They do have more complex emotions than we used to say, and it's kind of like, yeah, duh. But to see, to spend time around animals, to know, like, as you said, how connected they are to us, I'm curious of that dialogue of the other way around too, of humans getting more sensitive to the experience of animals. And I know that's a big part of the work that you do, is of opening yourself up to be more sensitive and receptive to what the animals are feeling. Because, I mean, animals, you know, your dog might understand a few human words, but they can understand a lot more beyond language. And I'm assuming it's a similar way for you of, it's not, you know, necessarily language. You're not learning different bird calls and cawing around to the animals. You're connecting to them on a deeper level. And I know in that work, like I said, you do a lot of the work with horses and dogs and cats and all this stuff, but you also do some amazing work with wild animals and things. And I've heard some of the things that you've said that they've said, and I'd love to kind of communicate some of that message to our listeners of the messages that you get from some of these animals, of the dire conditions that we're in right now because of the things that our humans doing to the planet. What do you hear? When you're connecting with these animals, what do they respond back with you in terms of that message?
Well, let's say that, and this is a meditative process, that I'm going to melt down my ego. I have no thought. I have no emotion. Now, I have a way to access them through a tunnel of light that's coming out of my heart. In the yogi tradition, you have bodies that extend out of your physical body, and they're very real. I mean, our emotional body extends out of our physical body, and it's extremely real. Mm-hmm. With a lot of people, it controls our lives. But I'm going to make this connection between my heart and the heart of the animal. Now, once that connection is made so completely, every cell in my body reacts to every cell in his body. So I want to vibrate on the resonance of that animal. The more completely I can leave my body and be that elephant, now I can see the world through his point of view. And this work is seeing the point of view of the animal. They all have a point of view. And allowing the you that you know yourself to be, to stop operating out of the brain and to start operating in a deeper part of the body. It's operating out of the heart. Then it's operating out of the solar plexus. It's operating out of the belly. Now you're reversing the current. So rather than just sending out thought and emotion at all times, as humans do, and judging things, we're taking in energy. I'm going to pull all of his thoughts and emotions into me in a concentration that is so complete that there is nothing on the planet but my love for that elephant. There's nothing else that exists. And when you achieve that samadhi state, and it is that state of ecstasy, of bliss, even if I'm working in Thailand with an elephant who stepped on a landmine, even if I'm working with a tiger who's dying of an inoperable tumor, which is how I open this book, the love I feel is so blissful that the connection feels absolutely fantastic. It feels better than anything you could do as a separate particle when you're not connecting to the world around us. We're meant to connect to the world around us. We're supposed to evolve into this new sixth sensory being. And we don't have a choice anymore. If we don't start functioning with some compassion, we're all going to die. We're very close to it. And that is what the animals are telling me. That's what the sharks and the whales and the dolphins are telling me. Is that, if you guys don't grow up, you're going to destroy the world and take us all down with you. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people know that, and they wallow in despair. And it's a form of creating more helplessness for humans, rather than saying, now, wait a minute, I'm autonomous. I came to this planet to do something about this. And I'm going to do whatever I can, no matter how small. And if every single person had that kind of proactive attitude, then we can turn all this around. And it is happening now. Thank God it is happening. I mean, one of the biggest compliments of my life, my first 2 books got published in South Korea. And I started getting emails from Korean children saying that they won't eat cats or dogs anymore because they've read my book. Now I want that to expand to include China. The work in the first chapter, it's about tigers. So the way it works for me on a very personal level, I opened this book with a trip to a big cat sanctuary in South Florida. And I took with me Captain Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, who was my mentor, who's recently gone on to higher ground. But Ed went with me to vouch for me. The NBC Nightly News had a camera in my face. There was absolutely no way to not be present with everything that I have. I was terrified. I mean, you're sweating bullets. You've got the news chasing you around. We had not yet gone out to the tiger sanctuary. And mentally, I just tuned into them. And I said, and this is how it works. It's reverence, it's service, it's humbleness. Can I help you in any way? What's going on out there? Please help me. I am about to try to prove to the American public that not only can you all think and feel, but you can tell me what you think and feel. So what's happening out there? Is there anything new? Is there a problem? Is there anything dramatic? Now, I'm looking for disturbances in the field. I'm using Star Wars words here, but that's what it is. I'm looking for disturbances in the field. What's the biggest disturbance in the field? One of the tigers tells me, we're having a problem. Our eldest tiger has a problem with one of his teeth, and I don't want it to happen to me. He's in a lot of pain. And I said, which one is it? And he said, it's an upper left molar. Then in my mind, I moved to the next cage. It's a black jaguar. What's going on in your life? Is there anything I can help you with? He said, we're having problems with our tiger, the king of the sanctuary. And he's had a terrible problem with one of his teeth. I said, which one is it? He said, upper left molar. Now, I'm getting it confirmed. That's how I personally know that I'm on track with something. I hadn't done a web search. I'd never been to the place. I had no information. And I looked into the camera and I said, they all say there's a problem with their eldest tiger. It's his upper left molar. He's in a lot of pain. And they're all very concerned about him. They don't want it to happen to them. They also don't want to lose him. And the news and Dr. Mitchell, who is probably one of the greatest minds of our century, and not the greatest mind. This is a man who was completing Einstein's unified field theory in his spare time for fun. He went out to try to translate this in scientific terms for me. Thank God that I had his support. So we were walking through the sanctuary. We come up to this magnificent, huge male tiger Raja, who was, in fact, the king of this sanctuary. And he's still dripping blood out of his mouth. And Ed said, what happened to him? And they said, it was an upper left molar. They had to operate to take it out because he has an inoperable cancer tumor in his brain. So I also am an extremely grounded, brass tacks Texan Capricorn. And Ed Mitchell was a Texan Virgo, very grounded scientist.
Fellow Virgo over here.
Oh, love it. Virgo rising. I totally get it. I want to see the proof. I want to see the detail. And when I do a reading, I don't just want it vague. And with my students, I push them. I demand it. I want to know, what is the dog's favorite other dog? Oh, she's in heaven now. What color was she? What was her name? Her name was Olivia. When did she die? April. What did she die of? Lung cancer. And now who's she with? Oh, she's with your father. His name is Henry. And he died in World War II. I'm like, bang, 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 bang. I want to see the proof. I want the confirmation. And it has to be that real for you. It has to be real. Because if you're vague, it's not good enough. This is an art form. This is like learning how to play the piano or oil paint or downhill ski. It's like any other art form, that the more you practice it, the clearer it gets. Every one of my students has a starting point that blows their minds. When they come into the workshop, they have no idea they can do this. And everyone is astounded because they never tried before. And there's something in us that has access to the other living beings. It's the same thing that gave us the life in our animal body. We're animals too. We take down that layer of condescension, and we take down that arrogance and that ego. And then we're able to discover these animals are our teachers.
Well, I think that's something that indigenous cultures almost universally have understood, where we're missing a lot of that in our modern culture. I think modernization and cities have also contributed to this, where, when I hear someone say something like, well, I don't like the outdoors, I'm like, what? I don't understand. What do you mean you don't like you don't like, how can you not like the outdoors? But it's because someone's might have grown up inside a building for the majority of their life. That's how disconnected they are from nature. But the outdoors, nature, that's who we are. There's no separation between those things, but there's that apparent separation because of the consequences of our modern culture. And I think that disconnect is a big part of why we see the destruction of the planet that we do, because there's literally a disconnect from that part of ourselves that's just denied because, hey, I live inside this little cocoon now. And it's literally destroying our planet. You had talked about both the capacity for people to do this and the necessity of getting quiet. Years ago, when I was still living in Asia, I went to Malaysia to do a Kundalini yoga training. And it was just a couple of years after the tsunami had hit there. And the woman that was leading the training had been there with her young child at the time, her son. And she was telling us a story about how they went down to the beach that day. And they had just arrived at the beach when all of a sudden her young son said, "Mommy, we've got to go. We've got to go. We've got to go now." And she's like, "Honey, we just got here. We're not going anywhere." And the son's like, No. We have to go now." Starts throwing a huge fit. They get in the car. They drive back home, turn on the TV, found out that the tsunami had just hit. The mother turns to her son and says, How did you know? And the kid simply looks her in the face and says, "Mommy, didn't you hear it?" And when we looked at all the animals that moved to higher ground before the tsunami hit, this the child's mind, unpolluted by all the anxious, worrying thoughts that are constantly flooding our heads, had the capacity to hear and be present for that. And to me, when I hear the things that you say, and I mean, these are still concepts that exist within the realm of yoga itself, of just expanding your awareness, quieting your mind, being more receptive to other energies and things around you. I think it's so important that people reconnect with this. Otherwise, we will literally be the agent of our own demise. We're destroying the planet. We're destroying animals and nature. We need this listening. I know you teach a lot of people and you teach a lot of workshops. Would you be willing for our audience to offer just one technique or one thing that they can do to drop in and connect with nature more or with animals more?
Sure. And Ashton, you're saying being aware of the energy around you. See, that boy was aware of the energy within.
But more, yeah, I like that.
It was the energy within him that was responding to the energy around him.
Yes.
If you could imagine what must have been going on in the air when that tsunami was coming, what was happening as it was rolling over the ocean, coming toward the shore, if you could imagine what all the creatures under the sea were experiencing, and the child felt it. Now, he didn't negate it. That's the thing. The mother negated it. So there are two voices within us. There's the voice that has the authentic response to the world around you. Mommy, we gotta go. And then she comes in negating. Oh no, we have this time to spend. I got a good parking place. We have an hour and a half in the sunshine. All right, so she's in the analytical mind that wants to be in control. Part of this is you're surrendering to the energy within you, you're listening to it, and you're not in control. Now, if that elephant's going to send me a wave of fury, if that tiger's going to send me anguish, I'm not going to shut it down. I'm going to say, I love you, I'm here for you. I will do anything in my power to help you. Let me feel what you feel. Now, humans are scared of that. They're talking about little buildings. We love cages. We build cages for ourselves, and we build cages for everything else. We think everything has to be in a cage because we put ourselves in cages. Because we're very afraid of freedom. And that's why we don't honor wild animals. We don't honor the wildness within us. If you have freedom, you're responsible for your own choices. There's nobody to blame anymore. So that freedom and that wildness and that beauty is within us. And we have to go into it before we can open the channels and receive it and see it in the world around us. And so it's taking meditation to the next level. I taught once at an ashram in the south of France, and I had the incredible honor of teaching the swamis. And I said, yes, now you can move into the silence of your own mind. You can sit in silence, no thought, no emotion. Now, how do we take that out into the world around us so that if I want to connect to the eagle, the hawk, the horse, the bird, the cheetah, how am I going to learn how to do that? So you're moving into the part of you that's like a jet. And I said to these guys, you can get into the pilot seat of your jet. Now, can you fly it? We'll learn the instrument panel. We're going to get the airplane off the tarmac. You're going to fly your consciousness to whatever it is that you want to connect with and be able to commune with that energy and have a conversation with it. And this includes human spirits that have passed to the other side. This includes the organs inside your body. This includes anywhere that you want to take your consciousness and investigate something. Or if your child is ill, or if your mother's dying, or she needs a new, to be moved to a new home. You need to be making these choices all day, every day. And what we do, we all have the intuitive response, and then we negate it. Then people will say to me, oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that. But we didn't respond in real time. So it's sitting with the animal or even a picture of the animal, being able to move out of your own heart, creating what I call lumen silta, it's a bridge of light. Captain Edgar Mitchell said it's real. That when two waves meet, they become twice as big. It's called establishing phase. That makes the wave function possible so that you can vibrate on the same wave as your animal. Now, if you're sitting with your dog, with your cat on your chest on the couch, you're going out with your horse, or maybe you're just going for a walk in nature, inviting whatever to come your way that wants to speak to you. You're in this state of grace. And you're loving the world and all the beautiful animals within it. You're loving them. And you're in silence, listening rather than sending out. That's why the yoga students are a billion miles ahead when it comes to this work, because that's the first step is quieting your mind and your emotions, listening and not being resistant to what's going to come into us.
What would you say for people that want to get more receptive and they want to connect more in with nature and everything else, and that they're willing to do that, to, you know, whether it's going on a walk through nature or just trying to connect with their particular pet companion more, and they're doing that type of stuff? What's something else that everyone could do to help with what's happening in the world right now? Like what's an actionable step other than that personal connection, which I would say is probably the most important thing, because if we don't have that, we won't have the desire to do all that other stuff and to really change the system, as it were. But once the people are making those connections, what then? How can people help? I know that you have a charitable organization where you do a lot of work, but what are the types of things that people can do to actually make some positive change? You mentioned earlier that people can feel helpless at times. What can people do to really take the reins a little bit more and start to make some change?
Well, with their own personal animal, the beginning of this, of communicating, is being able to take that 30 minutes, no television, no radio, no distractions, and just sit in silence with them and say, what do you need to tell me that I haven't been able to hear? That's when you pick up, oh, it's a tooth, it's not a stomach problem. Oh, it's a hip, it's a spine, it's not their paw. That's when you start learning how to use your body as an instrument. Now, this book, Whispers from the Wild, has a chapter on tigers, then it's elephants in Africa, it's lions primarily in Africa, it's great white sharks in Africa, like mamba I've met in Africa, different types of paradigms and ideas about art, music, and spirituality and sexual prejudices, and changing our entire view of what we're looking at, so that we're acknowledging that they're thinking, they're feeling, and they're worthy of our respect and our protection. Whales all over the world, and the last chapter is bees. Now, I spotlight the charities that I love and work with. My own personal charity, Archangel, is a very new nonprofit. I go into rural communities in Africa and I work with the children. So last year I had 180 orphans in a field in Rwanda, where we're dancing as gorilla, we're drawing gorilla, we're making up theater about gorillas and poaching. I'm teaching these children you can make more money and have a long-term successful financial future if you're protecting the animals on the safari parks. Same thing with the girls, getting all the girls activated so that this 50% of the workforce isn't at home taking care of somebody else's baby, which is what most of them do. They drop out of school. So the most important thing that we can do is educate the next generation. If the next generation, who will inherit this planet and all its animals, and be our doctors and attorneys, and the head of the pharmaceutical companies, and our farmers, they're going to be the people making choices about, do we torture animals in cosmetic labs? Do we torture animals in factory farms? Do we allow this kind of fishing to happen that's overfishing our oceans? So if we invest ourselves in these children, that's the only hope for this planet. Because a lot of our generation, I'm sorry to say, and I sound incredibly skeptical, they're too far gone. They're invested in corruption. They're making money, and a lot of it, they can't help it. Even in Africa, maybe they have a child that's dying of AIDS. They have a sick mother. They have a sick wife. They've got to take care of everyone. So we need solutions that work. And in a smaller scope, in your own community, it's finding what's the local tiger sanctuary. What is the sanctuary for elderly horses? How can I volunteer 1 day a week, even to go down to the animal shelter and just walk the dogs, clean some cages, say, what can I do? If everybody would abandon that very invested self of helplessness that's become the norm now, it's almost posh to be really critical and condescending and jaded and say, no, this isn't cool. What's cool is going out there in service and volunteering somehow. Whether you have some money, you have some time, you have some skills. Maybe you can help a charity with your internet skills. Or maybe you're an electrician and you can go help them with their electric fences. I mean, who knows? It's an entire new paradigm. We're realizing that helping animals is fun.
Well, and I love just the overall message of like, we need to connect more. We need to connect more with ourselves. We need to connect more with nature, with animals. And as you said, I mean, sure, maybe it's your dharma to do some grand thing, but also it can be as simple as just going and helping, walk someone's dog for them or contributing to the local shelter or whatever it may be. And again, like you said, it doesn't have to be, scrubbing cages. Maybe it's you're helping them with their web page because that's the skills that you have. And I think that the more that people are willing to get involved in however they can, however small or big, that's really important, because I think some people get stuck that, I need to do this big grand thing to help. It's like, no, just do whatever it is you can. And if everybody does that, we're going to see the world change in some pretty powerful and amazing positive ways. So I love that you're sending this message out there and that you're helping people connect to animals more, into nature more. Where can people find out more about the work that you do? I know you've got a website, you have workshops that you offer, you've got your books. What's the best place for people to get a hold of you?
The site is just my name. It's ameliakinkade.com. It's spelled with 2 Ks if you're listening, at Kinkade. I've got a workshop coming up in Palm Springs in March for people that want to see me live. That's on the site. I've got webinars that are now for sale, pre-recorded webinars. Everything's $100 off. I'm running a massive deal. There's also meditations, there's books, there's some on-camera instruction that's on the site, on the store page. And I think that, the one thing that we touched on that I just want to complete this idea, we're talking about tigers, and you wanted this show to be about animal cruelty. This is really disgusting and it's very hard-hitting. But if anybody goes online and finds these pictures of half a tiger in piles, tiger pieces in piles. And tigers in the wild probably have less than a year on Earth. And we aren't even aware of that as Americans. We don't even understand what's going on. And I'm not saying this with any judgment toward the Chinese people, because I hope that my next big move will be to go to China and speak to Chinese children. But China is making tiger medicine. Now, tiger medicine means that they're murdering tigers and making little teeny pills out of everything from that tiger's whiskers to his claws to his internal organs to her tail to her cubs. And they have their fallacies about how this has some medicinal value. Same thing with rhino horn. To be able to reach those kids and say, there's better medicine than this. We don't do this anymore. We don't have to do this anymore. Now, I'm coming from Africa where the sanctuaries, I'm talking protected sanctuaries that have guys walking around with rifles, will have helicopters come in the middle of the night And the guys have machine guns and wire cutters that come in, they cut the electric fences, they airlift the rhino out of there, murder the rhino. And we as Americans can't just turn our heads and say there's nothing I can do. We can start small. We can continue to talk about it. We can share the word. We can tell stories. We can protest. And more than anything, we can educate and change consciousness.
Well, and I think you said something that I really like, where, you know, we can phrase it in a way, because I have a lot of respect for traditional Chinese medicine. I understand some of the backside of why they're going to, and they eat some pretty wild and crazy things.
Ashton, as I do too.
Yeah. Well, no.
So have had some great success with Chinese medicine.
Yeah. Well, I love the way that you phrased it, though, of we have better medicine than that now. That's not to say that all Chinese, like, there's some amazing things with Chinese herbs, but when we're talking about like lions and tigers, like, or rhino horn, like, look, you don't need, like, okay, I get that that's part of your medicine and that's fine, but we have other things that will be better for you now, where we don't have to wipe an entire species off of our planet to get that medicine. And that's a really important distinction to me, is that keep your medicine, keep your beliefs, that's fine. And in the cases where you were literally creating the extinction of an entire species, we've got other medicine that can help with that doesn't require that. And I think that's a really important part of the conversation.
So well said, because I work the middle ground, which means I'm going to try to go into these places compassionate without being too judgmental. I'm not going to battle with an ego saying I'm right, you're wrong. But to be able to say, this has evolved now. And that's so well said, because a lot of Chinese medicine is utterly brilliant. Mm-hmm. The system's been undisturbed for thousands of years. They've been able to evolve without wars coming in. And we've had these problems. We've had renaissances in our medicine that got decimated by one war or another. And Chinese medicine has evolved beautifully, but there are some things that need to change. And I don't want to go in there with a bat. I want to go in there with an open heart and try to find some middle ground.
I love it. And I think that that's just such an important part of when we look at things like politics in the United States right now and things that are going on, where there's so much combative nature, there's so much I'm right, you're wrong, you're the devil and I'm not, and the other side's saying the same thing. It's like, if we can find a space where we're a little bit more understanding, a little more compassionate, like, hey, you've got different views than I do, but can we all agree that we don't want like this species to go extinct? We don't want ourselves to go extinct. We don't want to pollute our water. We don't want to destroy the planet that we have to live. So let's find other smart ways where we can still hold on to the things that make us different, but at the same time recognizing like that we have similar goals, that ultimately in connection we want bigger things. That connection piece is so huge to me, and whether it's nature, animals, or human connections, if you're disconnected from people, there's that separation and it's hard to come to terms. But anyone, no matter how separate they see, you take two different people, you put them in a room and you shed a few of those basic barriers, people are people, and they connect that way. It's like, it's one thing when you see somebody getting bombed on TV. It's another thing if you're sitting in front of someone and like you're hearing their story about how their child was killed. You don't ever want to contribute to a country that's dropping a bomb on those people ever again, because you've got a personal connection, and that connection piece is so profound. And I love that the work that you do is so focused in particular on getting people to connect more. So thank you so much for the work that you do. I'm sure that our listeners have got a lot from our chat today. I hope they look you up and get involved with the work that you're doing. So I hope that we can all collectively raise the standard a little bit and make some changes in how we're treating nature and how we're treating animals, whether it be your pet companions at your home, or animals in the area around your home, or animals on the other side of the planet that may be endangered because of trophy hunting and all kinds of other things. So again, Amelia, thank you so much for being on the show. You're amazing. Thanks for the work that you do. For everyone listening out there, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've learned something today. I hope you have a very present and connected moment. Namaste. Hey everybody, if you have a spare minute, please go over to iTunes, leave us a rating and a review. We really appreciate it. And if you're on Facebook, check out our new Facebook group. It's the same name as our blog, Savannah East. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaheast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.